Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. We continue in Naples, Florida at the annual Legata Summit. And join me right now, one of the great fighters for religious liberty and pro-life activity since the Reagan years, and that is Alan Sears. He is the founder of the Alliance Defending Freedom. Alan, great to have you back. You served on that Attorney General's Commission on Pornography. They laughed, the mainstream press laughed about it. Now, Time Magazine this last year published a story talking about all the harm that pornography is doing. Well, Al, 30 years to catch up.
Yeah, Al, it's so great to be with you. And as we were talking off air before we went on, it's so interesting how the mainstream media is finally beginning to tell some of the real story. And the commission in 85-86 blasted out a report documenting beyond any doubt or argument the grave harms to men, women, boys dealing with this plague of pornography. Now, every major hotel chain in America has withdrawn their porn channel. Every major outlet that still sells even the mildest porn hides it under the counter. People understand the link between trafficking, human trafficking, and exploitation, and so many other things. And it's just absolutely amazing to me how we are finally catching up with what we talked about 30 years ago.
I know. It's marvelous. The Trump election has all kinds of ramifications. I want to focus in on it's on religious liberty first. And when I went to the meeting in last June in New York City, then candidate Trump was the only presidential candidate. And again, I had my own problems with him in a lot of areas, but on this area of religious liberty, he's the only candidate who ever spoke about the Johnson Amendment and made promises that he'd go after it.
Well, I was so appreciative of that, and like you, I had to be, as head of a 501c3, neutral in the election.
Yes, same thing.
As you did, but the Johnson Amendment was passed. People don't even understand it sometimes. I'll just quickly overview. It was passed on a voice vote with no debate by the United States Senate when Lyndon Johnson, in a primary election, had trouble because a 501c3 group published the true facts on the differences between how Lyndon Johnson talked in Texas running for office and how he voted and acted in office in Washington. And so he wanted to shut that down.
Yeah.
Well, when he barred 501c3s from speaking out relating to elections, he also, in the law, included the churches, including the Roman Catholic Church, saying basically that no priest could ever talk about a candidate and endorse or oppose, no matter how far out of alignment they were with church teaching or how in alignment they were. Very general. So some years ago,
it's completely arbitrary, too.
Completely arbitrary. Yeah. No constitutional basis for this. And, of course, this nation was founded by the church speaking out. The Carroll family, the only Catholic to sign both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, would have been shocked and outraged. Bishop Carroll, who founded Georgetown University, all these guys were intensely involved in their official role as clergy and Catholic laity in the formation of the country, speaking out on public policy, forming the basis of the republic. Well, anyway, jump forward. Some years ago, we had about 100 evangelical pastors and a couple of bishops calling us and saying, what can we do about this problem? We launched a project where actually now more than 1,500 pastors have deliberately violated the Johnson Amendment.
Yes.
They preached a sermon on Sunday, mailed a DVD or a CD to the IRS.
To the IRS,
right. We broke the law.
He said,
please enforce it. Well, the IRS, as an evangelical pastor said, I hope they got saved listening to all those sermons. But Al, in joyful response, they did nothing. And we really showed the paper tiger. But the law is on the books, and people of faith want to adhere to the law.
Right.
And so now Congressman Jody Hice from Georgia, who also does a local radio talk show, like you, Al, just in a Georgia market. He was a Baptist pastor, ran for office. He's now introduced a bill to repeal the Johnson Amendment. We've been told that the House leadership has promised it'll be voted on.
Nice.
It'll go through the Senate. And President Trump, as of course he pledged, said he would sign the bill.
He was the only candidate I ever heard mention it.
So what he understood was we've got to remove lawful legal barriers to the ability of our church to be able to fully engage in the public square. This doesn't mean the church is going to become a politician.
Oh, right.
Or
That's not its purpose.
the priests
right.
are going to be running for office. This means that we need to have the ability to speak our faith in all areas of our life, including the public policy area.
Yes.
You know, what we've seen with the threats to religious freedom, which go to the next probably area you want to talk about. You know, President Obama, with his Health and Human Services, put out what you've talked about a lot of time, the Obamacare mandates, declaring that every employer, except the church itself, but every Christian college, every Catholic university, every Catholic charity and ministry, every other type of charity and ministry, as well as private employers, had to fund abortion, sterilization, and so-called birth control pills. Yeah. Regardless of what their faith understanding was on this, are face a monumental fine of $100 per day per employee, which would devastate. Alliance Defending Freedom was blessed to engage in 24 different sets of lawsuits on these things. And by the grace of God, we've won a bunch of them, and 2 of them at the U.S. Supreme Court. But those battles have continued on. The Department of HHS, the Obama folks, said, so what? We lost the Supreme Court. We're going to change it again. We'll keep fighting.
Right.
Now, President Trump is keeping his promise. He's already beginning to put people in HHS who are working to dismantle this outrage, this constitutional violation of right of conscience. And we're going to see within the next year all of these things that were done over the past 8 years undone. Yeah. And I can tell you, our organization spent millions of dollars, donated dollars, to defend Catholic business people, Catholic colleges, 5 different evangelical colleges and universities at the Supreme Court. And, you know, these battles will no longer have to be fought on that front. We got so many other places.
Yeah, right.
But for those that were worried about the outcome of the election, one thing we can say is that it is a much brighter day on the federal level in many areas for the people of the United States. And we will see religious freedom flourishing on some federal agency levels in ways that we have not seen at least for 8 years. And
so on the federal level, it looks very good. How about on state level? Because you've got a number of cases here that you're still fighting.
Well, on the local and state level, I will tell you, as happy and excited as we are about some of this great progress in the federal level, and some of these state and local things will be helped with the right Supreme Court picks. But remember, if we have a Scalia replacement of a Scalia, we still have a split court that could be 5-4. But the biggest issue we have going on the local and state level now that your listeners would probably want to know about are these continuing battles for the right of conscience.
Right.
And Mr. Trump's election is not going to help these clients in the short term or even the long term, because their local ordinances, cities, states, counties have passed laws. One of the kind of laws they passed are called SOGIs, Sexual Orientation Gender Identity Laws, Al. Okay. And these laws basically proscribe private employers, including charities and ministries, from doing certain things recognized on the basis of gender or on sexual behavior or orientation. So what does that mean in real life? That means that Baronelle Stutzman, the floral artist in Central Washington, one of the top floral artists in her area, when approached by her longtime client, who she loved and cared for, said, don't just sell me flowers and decorations.
This is Arlene's Flowers.
This is Arlene's Flowers. He said, I now am going to marry my male partner, and I want you to, Baronelle, to produce the most beautiful artistic creation to help me celebrate this new kind of marriage.
Now, this is a longtime friend of hers.
She loved the guy.
Yeah.
She had served him well. She had people who identify as gay in her floral shop as employees. She treated them fairly and well. But she said, there's a line I can't cross. And the line I can't cross is to celebrate a so-called redefinition of marriage. And so the response is they sue her for everything she has. That case was argued in the Supreme Court of Washington just a few weeks ago. We wait the outcome. Another one of these cases.
Let me just stop you there for a minute. Do these things run up against public accommodation laws? Is that the chief problem?
It depends on how the particular city or state or county law or ordinance has been drafted. Some are part of the accommodation laws.
Okay.
Some are freestanding laws. Probably as you ask me a legal question, so you get one of these too long for the public lawyer answers.
Sure.
But these included in the accommodation laws. Well, let's jump to another case.
Yeah.
The city of Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix passed an ordinance that is unbelievable. It says that if you engage in what they label as discrimination based on sexual orientation, that you are subject to a $2,500 fine and up to 6 months in jail for every single day that you will not bow down and comply. This means if on Monday you won't do an artistic, creative act to further another kind of sexual behavior, you have up to 6 months in jail. On Tuesday, you face up to 6 months in jail. Wednesday, ad infinitum. So literally, you could face life imprisonment for refusing to bow to Caesar. And we represent their two dear young ladies whose picture you're looking at here, Brianna and Joanna, who started an artistic calligraphy business. They're wonderful young Christian ladies, and they wanted to glorify God with their business. So they do this original art calligraphy stuff. And it's also pretty expensive, frankly.
Yeah.
And your listeners could go to their website. But they design it, and they want to celebrate weddings, communions, baptisms, other key events in people's lives, birthdays, etc. And
this is why they're in business.
They're in business as creative artists,
right?
And they want, and so this is original art to further their sense of joy for those people that they represent.
Yeah.
And now the government of Phoenix is saying, if someone comes to you and wants to have a wedding invitation, original art, conceived by you, developed by you, and hand done by you, and you won't do it, every day you won't do it, you face the fine and up to 6 months in jail. We could go on and on with these cities. Now, this is a crisis. Now, eventually, if we are able to get a majority of dependable, strong constitutionalists on the Supreme Court, this will be won. But in the meantime, the next year, 2 years, who knows? It's up to God how long it'll be these justices serve and who is replacing them.
So to these men and women that we're talking about here, Baronel Stutzman, Brianna Koski, Johanna Duca, and others, is there at the present time a legal way for them to win?
Well, we hope that we will win.
Or do we have to hold out? You know what I'm saying?
Well, we have, their cases are in court.
Yeah.
They've been argued and they're on appeal. I'll give you one case that has been won so far.
Sure, go ahead.
Blaine Adamson.
Yep.
Blaine had a company in Lexington, Kentucky called Hands On Originals. An absolutely top designer of T-shirts. In fact, so good that the University of Kentucky was one of his major clients, and he was so popular that many people would come to him. But Blaine also, being a member of the faith community, a Christian, had developed standards on what his company would and would not do. And he had turned down, and he actually had documentation, a number of other proposals. A restaurant that in my view demeans women. I don't want to name the brand name, but it features a sexualization of women. Wanted him to do their designs. He declined.
He turned them down.
A motorcycle group that, again, was foul in the way it treated women. He declined. A horror movie was being filmed in the area. He declined. Because each of these, he said, did not uphold the dignity of the human person. And he, as a member of our Christian community, could not do these things. He was approached by an organization that was involved in sponsoring a gay pride parade. They asked him to create attractive T-shirts that would call people to participate in that parade. And he said, I have a history. I don't do things that conflict with my faith.
Right.
I can't use my creative, original talent to design for you something that will attract people to something that my faith tells me they should not be participating in. Well, you'd think they'd go to the competitor who could do it for even less. But no, the Human Rights Commission in Lexington took this case. They began to prosecute Blaine, and his big client, the University of Kentucky, withdrew their business, said he was a bigot. You know how this works. Lots of adverse publicity in the media. But I'm thankful to say that we have won the case in the lower court. The so-called Human Rights Commission has now appealed it. It's been argued. We're waiting for that. So, if the Constitution, if the First Amendment was applied by the courts as our founders meant it to be, as it was written, we wouldn't need any new laws. We'd win.
Yeah.
But because of this judicial activism we've had for these years, with a recreated Constitution, these people stand in peril. But, my view is, Al, we've only got two choices for these people. We stand with them and we fight. Or I say it in Ronald Reagan's words, we saddle up and fight, or we sit back and surrender. We give the territory. And our brothers and sisters who are standing like, you think of Thomas More. When the King of England decreed that marriage could be redefined by the state, when he called on Cardinal Fisher and Thomas More, the Attorney General, to bow, they said no.
Right.
They said, we serve God, not man. We serve God's definition, not man's definition. Yeah. And they did that all the way to the execution. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that these people are going to be executed, but when you're in business
they can lose
and you
their
lose your
livelihood.
business,
Yeah.
it's a form of execution.
Yeah, absolutely.
They take your livelihood, they take your reputation. And what's so amazing is, Al, the folks on the other side say that they're doing this in the name of tolerance.
It's absurd.
They say they demand equality. They demand equality by saying that people of faith can't equally hold to or follow their views. The right of conscience, for all your listeners, is something a lot of people don't think about. Madison, who was the original sponsor of the First Amendment, said conscience is the most sacred of all property rights.
I agree.
And
I know exactly where you're going with this.
And again, our church talks about the right of conscience is inviolable. And what we forget is the right of conscience is not a feeling or an opinion. Conscience is about following a law outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. It's about when your heart and your understanding, your formation lines up with truth.
That's right.
So for a person of faith, there is not an option to say, I will not follow.
This is not a mere opinion. It's not a mere feeling. This is reality. I have to order my life according to this truth. This is real.
Just like our medical persons who face peril. Now, again, I'm so thrilled that the people that are going to be involved in the congressional and the federal executive branches are going to stand with our medical professionals on their right of conscience and religious freedom. But we have all sorts of, again, local and state groups that are also seeking to punish. In Washington State, we represent a family there, the Stormans. They own some grocery stores. They've been in business a long time. They have a wonderful reputation in the community. And in their grocery store, they had a pharmacy. Yeah. They said, we decline to dispense abortifacient drugs. I don't even think we should call them drugs, Al, but they kill people. Their purpose is to take human life.
Right.
They said, we won't stock and supply. The Washington State Pharmacy Board, a state agency, said, we don't care that within 10 minutes of your pharmacy location, there's 5 or 6 alternatives where they can get it. You can't be a licensed pharmacist and dispense any drug in Washington State if you won't dispense these abortifacients that are designed for the purpose of taking life.
Yeah.
That case has been fought and lost in the the Washington courts. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to review it with the death of Justice Scalia. We don't know where that case will ultimately end up. But in the meantime, here we are with state agencies, again, decreeing what our faith means to us. as a person of faith, as a Christian, as a Catholic, we can't sell abortifacients. We cannot profit from taking the life of innocent unborn.
Right.
And it's not a debate.
Right.
But yet the government says the price that you will pay for following your conscience and this law outside yourself is that you will no longer be allowed to even be in the business.
Yeah, it's astounding.
So now we got to fight.
We do have a chance, though.
But there's good news. And the good news for me is we have countless people who are standing up as never before.
Yes, right.
You know, just a few years ago, I was blessed to serve in the Reagan years. And I'll tell you, that was kind of a wake-up call for America because in these years since, a lot of people just laid back and slumbered. They thought, hey, you know, it's a downhill slide. You know, we've made some electoral bad choices. The government's expanding. All these horrible things are happening. It can never be reversed. But guess what? November, a lot of things changed. A lot of things are going to get better. And so the lesson is persevere. Stay in, stand and fight, and we can make a difference. And so I'm thankful for these clients, and I'm thankful for the lawyers in the Greater Alliance, not just those employed by Alliance Defending Freedom, but those allies in other organizations and volunteer lawyers that we work with that are sacrificing their time, talent, and treasure.
This is a winnable war.
It's a winnable war.
And I think that's what people are beginning to see again, that this can be won. It's not just, it doesn't necessarily have to end with tragedy here. There can be real victory.
Well, we started out talking about, in 1985-86, Ronald Reagan put together the Pornography Commission.
Right.
That commission called on the hotel industry to quit selling pornography.
Yep.
And, of course, then it was a baby industry, as they call it. It wasn't even an industry, but the hotel industry was selling pornography, which, in my view, is more of a criminal enterprise. Yeah. But to make a long, long story short, 2017 we sat here, and every major hotelier in the United States has quit selling those channels of that satellite pornography. Now, a lot of the Hollywood garbage that comes out has a lot of bad things in it, but it's a whole lot different game.
It is.
Than what we were talking about.
And you don't see the story covered in the New York Times, Time Magazine, CNN, because they don't want to acknowledge these victories over a long period of time.
Well, you know, I was on one of the national, I won't name, one of the big three oil networks.
Yeah.
And the host was, you know, getting all over me, razzing me about the censorship that I was advocating. You know, their favorite word is censorship. And I said, well, you know, I think you engage in a lot of censorship by the stories you choose to not cover.
Yep.
But I asked him this. I said, how much does your network sell a 30-second ad at the Super Bowl for? And he gave me a number that was just astounding. I think at that time it was $500,000 or something for a 30-second spot. I said, now, is your network committing fraud? Because is the purpose you're selling that ad to change behavior? Changing behavior of what product selection somebody makes, or their decision to buy or sell? Are you telling me that your network takes $500,000 for a 30-second ad that you represent will change behavior, but yet you tell me somebody watching 90 minutes of hardcore pornography every night for 6 years won't change their behavior?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
Common sense. Common sense. And so this is the great thing, Al. When people of faith, when people with traditional values really begin to understand how to deal with these issues themselves, how to stand up, this country almost always ultimately makes the right decision.
Yeah.
And I would predict that the pendulum has swung horribly badly on the right of conscience. Mm-hmm. And it's probably going to swing even worse before this battle is over. But there will be a day, not so far away, that the people of faith will say, enough's enough. And even a lot of what I call honest liberals, people who truly believe in the right of others to dissent and disagree, will also line up, and we will swing that pendulum back to a point of sanity. So the key message for your listeners today is we need to persevere. When you hear about people in peril, let them know about Alliance Defending Freedom. Go on, it's adflegal.org. adflegal.org. Let people know about those who are being persecuted for following their faith, free representation, and let us know these stories so we can respond. Let people call your show. Call Al Kresta.
Yeah, we'll
let him know.
Pass it right
He'll
on.
pass it on,
Yep.
and he'll feature some of these on the air.
Yep.
And as we continue to publicize, educate people, the pendulum will swing back. But you know, we've got to fight in the meantime.
You do. Alan, thank you so much. Again, adflegal.org, right?
Yes, sir. adflegal.org.
Alan Sears, thank you so much.
Al,
always good talking with you.
We were trying to figure out before we went on how many years of friendship, but maybe we should neither one admit to it. We both had brown hair when we first did.
We did.
God bless you.
God bless you, Alan. Thank you. I'm Al Kresta. We'll be back.